What happens when humanity's greatest hope for survival turns into its most chilling nightmare? Join us on a journey to a distant world where 6,000 pioneers set out to build a new future, only to uncover an ancient, living planet with secrets that bend the void of space itself. As hope fades and reality twists, their mission transforms into a battle for existence. Will they find a way to survive, or will they become part of the very world they sought to claim? In the year 2154, Earth stood at a precipice. Climate change, overpopulation, and dwindling resources had pushed humanity to its limits. The oceans rose higher every year, cities became overcrowded, and fertile land grew scarce. Scientists had long warned of impending disaster, and while technological advancements had delayed the inevitable, it was clear that Earth could no longer sustain humanity's growing needs. Salvation lay not beneath Earth's skies but among the stars. For decades, astronomers had searched for a second home. They scanned the heavens for planets that could support life, their efforts culminating in the discovery of Kepler 452d, an Earth-like exoplanet orbiting a distant star in the Lyra constellation. The planet, affectionately named Eden by hopeful scientists, seemed to offer everything humanity needed: breathable air, vast oceans, lush greenery, and a temperate climate. It was the perfect candidate for colonization, a second chance for the human race. Eden was over 1,400 light-years away, but the development of the Alcubierre drive, a revolutionary propulsion system that warped space-time itself, had made interstellar travel possible. Project Exodus was born out of necessity and hope, a multinational initiative aimed at ensuring humanity's survival. The project's mission was clear: send a self-sustaining colony of 6,000 carefully selected individuals to Eden to establish the first permanent human settlement outside the solar system. The colonists were not chosen lightly. Scientists, engineers, medical professionals, and agricultural experts were handpicked to ensure the survival and success of the colony. Civilians with diverse skill sets and cultural backgrounds were included to create a thriving society. Months of rigorous training and psychological evaluations followed, weeding out those who could not withstand the immense pressures of such a journey. The final group represented the best humanity had to offer: a tapestry of resilience, innovation, and ambition. The Sovereign, the most advanced colony ship ever built, would carry the settlers to their new home. It was a marvel of engineering, equipped with artificial gravity, self-sustaining life support systems, and a state-of-the-art cross-sleep chamber to preserve the colonists during the 22-year journey. The ship's AI, Eden Core, would oversee every aspect of the mission, from navigation to resource management, ensuring the colonists reached their destination safely. As the Sovereign prepared to launch, the eyes of the world turned skyward. Billions watched the event unfold on their screens, their hopes and dreams pinned on the ship's departure. The colonists carried the weight of an entire species on their shoulders. Their success would ensure humanity's future. Their failure would seal its doom. The launch was flawless. The Sovereign ascended from Earth's surface, its engines blazing with brilliance, leaving behind a trail of light and smoke. The sight was both awe-inspiring and bittersweet. For the colonists, there would be no return. For Earth, it was a farewell and a promise, a goodbye to 6,000 lives, and a pledge to hold on until salvation arrived from the stars. As the ship faded into the void, the cheering crowd could not imagine the horrors that awaited. What they believed was humanity's greatest hope was, in truth, the beginning of something far darker than anyone could have foreseen. The voyage to Eden was as daunting as the destination itself. Traveling 1,400 light-years meant more than just distance. It meant venturing into the unknown, a journey where even the smallest error could lead to catastrophe. To endure the 22-year trip, the colonists were placed into cross-sleep, their bodies frozen in time, while the ship's AI, Eden Core, monitored their vitals and maintained the Sovereign's systems. The Sovereign was a self-sufficient marvel designed to withstand the rigors of interstellar travel. Its hull was reinforced to repel micrometeoroids, and its life support systems were built to recycle air, water, and waste with near-perfect efficiency. The ship's massive hydroponics bay grew food and oxygen for the crew who remained awake, mostly the skeleton team of engineers, medics, and researchers tasked with overseeing the voyage. Yet even with such meticulous planning, long-duration space travel was not without challenges. For those awake aboard the ship, the first few years passed uneventfully. The Sovereign sailed through the silent void, far from the light of any star. The isolation was profound, with only the soft hum of the ship's engines and the endless expanse of darkness outside to keep the crew company. The monotony of life aboard the vessel began to take its toll. Days blurred into weeks and weeks into months, as the crew followed their rigid schedules of maintenance, health checks, and personal routines. The psychological strain was inevitable. Humans, social by nature, struggled in the confined spaces of the ship. Frustrations grew over time, and small disagreements began to escalate into larger conflicts. Eden Core, programmed to monitor immediate disputes, became an ever-present force, its soothing voice a constant reminder of the mission's importance. But even the AI's interventions couldn't quell the growing tensions among the crew. Then came the first anomaly. Roughly 5 years into the journey, the Sovereign's long-range sensors detected a faint but persistent signal. It was almost imperceptible at first, a low-frequency pulse that seemed to emanate from a nearby cluster of asteroids. At first, the crew dismissed it as a natural phenomenon, perhaps a pulsar or the residual echo of a collapsing star. But the signal persisted, growing stronger as the Sovereign approached the asteroid belt. Curiosity warred with caution among the crew. Some argued for investigating the signal, believing it could be a groundbreaking discovery, a sign of intelligent life, perhaps even a long-lost probe from Earth. Others insisted the mission's priority was reaching Eden, and any delay could jeopardize their carefully calibrated timeline. The debate grew heated, and eventually the captain overruled the dissenters. The Sovereign would stay its course, leaving the signal unexamined. But the anomaly didn't stay behind. As the ship moved away, the signal's frequency began to shift, as though it were adapting. Soon it seemed to follow them, growing in strength the farther they traveled. What had once been faint background noise became a steady, intrusive hum, detectable even on the ship's internal sensors. Unease began to spread among the crew, a creeping dread that no one could explain. It was as if something in the darkness had taken notice of them and was drawing closer. By the time the Sovereign entered orbit around Eden, the crew's unease had reached a fever pitch. The signal, which had grown stronger and more erratic, vanished as suddenly as it had appeared. Relief washed over the colonists, though it was tinged with suspicion. No one could explain the signal's origin, nor why it had ceased, just as they approached their destination. Theories ranged from natural phenomena to glitches in the ship's sensors, but no one dared to voice the darker possibilities lingering in their minds. Eden itself was breathtaking. The planet's surface was a mosaic of blues, greens, and whites, strikingly similar to Earth. Vast oceans sparkled beneath dense, swirling clouds, while sprawling continents were covered in thick, verdant forests. Rivers carved through the land like veins, feeding into shimmering lakes. From orbit, it was everything the colonists had hoped for: a pristine world untouched by human hands, ready to be molded into a new home. Excitement began to replace the unease that had plagued the crew during the voyage. They had made it. The first landing team descended in a dropship, carefully selecting a region near the equator with mild temperatures and fertile soil. The air was breathable, the gravity comfortable, and the flora, though alien in appearance, seemed non-threatening. The colonists marveled at the towering trees with crystalline leaves and fields of strange, luminescent flowers that swayed as if responding to an unseen breeze. It was a paradise, a world brimming with potential. Over the next few days, the colonists began setting up their outpost. Prefabricated structures were assembled, creating a small but functional base of operations. The hydroponics modules were activated, water sources tested, and soil samples collected for analysis. It seemed as though everything was proceeding according to plan. But as the settlers ventured further from the landing site, they began to uncover signs that Eden was not as untouched as it appeared. It started with strange formations scattered across the landscape, monolithic structures jutting out of the ground, their surfaces covered in moss and faintly glowing etchings. They appeared to be artificial, though their design was unlike anything the colonists had ever seen. The structures emitted a faint hum, almost imperceptible, that seemed to resonate through the air. Attempts to analyze the material proved fruitless. It was composed of elements unfamiliar to human science. Initially, the colonists dismissed the structures as remnants of a long-dead civilization. Many were thrilled at the prospect of uncovering the planet's history, believing the discovery could provide valuable insights. Excavation teams were dispatched to study the monoliths, but as they worked, strange things began to happen. Tools malfunctioned inexplicably near the structures. Communication equipment crackled with static whenever the teams approached. And then, one by one, members of the excavation crews began to report vivid, unsettling dreams, visions of towering, shadowy forms watching them from the edges of their consciousness. At first, these dreams were dismissed as stress-induced, but the unease spread as more people began experiencing them. The final blow came when an entire excavation team failed to report back. They had been exploring a large monolith on the outskirts of the landing zone when contact was lost. A search party was dispatched, but they found no trace of the missing team, no signs of struggle, no equipment left behind. The only thing they discovered was the monolith itself, now glowing faintly, the hum emanating from it growing louder. What had once seemed like a paradise now felt ominous and foreboding. The colonists had come to Eden seeking a new beginning, but they were beginning to realize they had stumbled into something far beyond their understanding. The signal that had followed them across the void was not a coincidence. Something on Eden had been waiting and it was waking up. The disappearance of the excavation team sent shockwaves through the colony. Fear gripped the settlers, a cold, unrelenting dread that no one could shake. What had started as a promising new beginning was unraveling into chaos. The glowing monoliths that had initially inspired curiosity now felt like silent sentinels watching every move the colonists made. The air itself seemed heavier, the vibrant landscapes now shrouded in an oppressive stillness. Attempts to recover the missing team proved fruitless. Search parties scoured the area, but it was as though the team had been erased. Equipment readings near the monoliths became increasingly erratic, with compasses spinning wildly and sensors failing to capture clear data. The hum emanating from the structures grew louder, and some colonists reported hearing faint whispers when they were near. It was as if the planet was alive and aware of their presence. Tensions within the colony began to boil over. Some argued they should leave immediately, retreating to the sovereign and abandoning the mission. Others insisted they stay, unwilling to give up the years of effort and resources invested in reaching Eden. But the decision wasn't theirs to make. Eden Core, the ship's AI, had already calculated that the colony's resources would not support a return journey. The Sovereign had been designed for one purpose: to ensure humanity's foothold on this new world. There was no turning back. With no choice but to press forward, the colonists redoubled their efforts to understand the monoliths. Advanced equipment was deployed to analyze their structure, but the results defied explanation. The material was unidentifiable, resistant to drilling or cutting. Energy readings fluctuated unpredictably, as though the monoliths were responding to the colonists' presence. Frustration gave way to desperation, and some settlers began to suggest the monoliths were not remnants of a long-dead civilization, but part of something still active, something that might explain the signal they had encountered during their journey. As the colonists struggled to make sense of their surroundings, more unsettling events unfolded. Strange lights appeared in the sky at night, dancing in patterns that no one could attribute to natural phenomena. Shadows seemed to move in the forests beyond the camp, though no creatures were ever seen. Equipment left unattended would disappear without explanation, only to reappear days later in places it shouldn't be. And then, the dreams started again. This time, they were not confined to the excavation crews. Nearly every colonist began experiencing vivid, inexplicable visions. They saw landscapes that seemed to shift and ripple, as though alive, heard whispers in a language they couldn't understand, and felt an overwhelming sense of being watched. The dreams became more intense with each passing night, leaving the colonists exhausted and on edge. Some awoke screaming, unable to describe what they had seen but certain it was no dream. Then came the first death. A technician working on the power grid was found lifeless near a monolith, his face frozen in an expression of terror. No injuries were visible, and no cause of death could be determined. Panic swept through the camp as the colonists realized they were no longer dealing with the unknown, they were facing something actively hostile. The monoliths were no longer passive anomalies. They were active, deliberate, and seemingly connected to the strange phenomena gripping the colony. The colonists began to wonder if the planet itself was the threat. The hum, the whispers, the inexplicable events, they all seemed to emanate from the ground beneath their feet. Eden was no longer a paradise. It was a predator, and the colony had become its prey. The death of the technician shattered what little confidence remained among the colonists. Fear transformed into paranoia, spreading like a contagion. People started to see threats everywhere, in the shadows of the forest, in the flickering lights of the base, and even in each other. Whispers of sabotage and betrayal began circulating as desperation took hold. The colonists were unraveling, and the sense of unity that had once defined the mission was breaking apart under the weight of their predicament. The leadership attempted to restore order, calling for calm and urging everyone to focus on survival. Security measures around the monoliths were increased, with armed guards posted to keep anyone from venturing too close. Yet this did little to ease the growing unease. The monoliths seemed unaffected by the precautions, continuing to emit their unsettling hum. Worse, more colonists began reporting strange occurrences, missing time, inexplicable sensations, and fleeting glimpses of figures that vanished when approached. It was then that Eden Core, the ship's AI, intervened. It had been monitoring the escalating situation and proposed a bold plan to use the colony's energy reserves to emit a powerful pulse aimed at the monoliths, disrupting whatever mechanism might be driving their strange behavior. The idea was met with mixed reactions. Some saw it as a necessary step to regain control, while others feared provoking an unknown force. But with morale deteriorating and no other options in sight, the decision was made to proceed. The operation began at dawn. Engineers worked tirelessly to modify the colony's power grid, repurposing the energy systems to create the pulse. The atmosphere was tense, with colonists watching from the safety of the base as the equipment was brought online. The hum of the monolith seemed to intensify, as though they were aware of what was coming. When the pulse was finally activated, the ground trembled as a wave of energy rippled outward, washing over the structures. For a brief moment, there was silence. The hum stopped, and the monoliths went dark, their faint glow extinguished. A wave of relief swept through the colony. Perhaps the pulse had worked. But the moment was short-lived. The silence was soon replaced by a low rumble that seemed to rise from deep within the planet. The ground shook violently, throwing colonists to the ground and toppling equipment. The sky darkened as an unnatural storm gathered overhead, with bolts of violet lightning crackling across the horizon. And then the monoliths came alive. Their glow returned, brighter and more intense than before, pulsating in synchronized patterns. The hum became a deafening roar, drowning out all other sounds. Around the structures, the ground began to split open, revealing tendrils of a black, viscous substance that moved with purpose, reaching toward the colony. The pulse had not disabled the monoliths, it had triggered something ancient and incomprehensible. Panic erupted as the colonists scrambled for safety. The tendrils moved with unnatural speed, enveloping machinery and tearing through structures. Those who came into contact with them were consumed, their screams cutting off abruptly as they were absorbed into the writhing mass. Eden was no longer just hostile, it was alive, and it was retaliating. The colonists realized the horrifying truth: the monoliths were not relics of a dead civilization. They were part of a living organism, an ancient intelligence that had lain dormant until now. And humanity's arrival, its attempt to colonize and control, had awakened it. The colony's desperate act to disable the monoliths had been perceived not as a plea for peace, but as a declaration of war. Chaos consumed the colony as the tendrils spread like living shadows, swallowing everything in their path. The alien storm above cast an eerie glow over the devastation, violet lightning splitting the sky and striking with precision. Colonists ran in every direction, their survival instincts overriding any semblance of order. The structures they had worked so hard to erect crumbled under the relentless assault, and the base became a battlefield where the enemy was the very ground beneath their feet. Eden Core, monitoring from the Sovereign in orbit, attempted to coordinate a response. Its calm, mechanical voice broadcasted instructions over the colony's comms, urging the settlers to regroup at designated rally points. Automated drones were deployed to provide cover, firing plasma bursts at the tendrils, but the effort was futile. The black substance absorbed the attacks, adapting to each new assault as if learning from its adversary. The AI's tactical acumen was no match for the raw, incomprehensible intelligence driving the planet's retaliation. Amid the chaos, the colony leadership made a grim decision: survival of the few over salvation of the many. The colony's transports, initially intended for exploration and supply runs, were prepared for emergency evacuation. But the transports could only hold a fraction of the remaining population. Priority was given to the injured, essential personnel, and those with the highest likelihood of contributing to the colony's survival if they could regroup elsewhere. It was a brutal calculation, but one deemed necessary. As colonists fought to reach the evacuation zones, the monoliths began to shift. What had once been immovable structures started to rise, shedding layers of moss and earth to reveal their true forms. They were not monuments, but towers of pulsating alien material, extending upward as if reaching for the storm. The hum, which had been a low vibration, escalated into a cacophony that resonated deep within the bones of those nearby. The sound seemed to speak to them, not in words but in feelings: rage, defiance, and a warning that humanity had trespassed where it did not belong. Then the visions began. Colonists froze mid-flight, their eyes glazing over as they were gripped by powerful hallucinations. They saw themselves not as individuals but as part of an interconnected whole, a network of thoughts and memories spanning millennia. Some dropped to their knees, overwhelmed by the experience, while others screamed and clawed at their heads, trying to block out the flood of alien sensations. A few, however, stood eerily still, their expressions blank as they turned back toward the monoliths, walking willingly into the tendrils. The realization dawned too late. Eden was more than a living planet. It was a sentient entity, and the monoliths were its mind made manifest. The colonists were not simply intruders, they were invaders, threatening the delicate balance of a consciousness that spanned the entire world. Their attempts to control or even understand it had triggered a defense mechanism, one designed to eliminate threats with ruthless efficiency. As the last transport ships ascended from the planet's surface, those left behind could only watch as the tendrils consumed the remnants of the colony. From orbit, the Sovereign sensors detected a shift in Eden's energy signature. The monoliths, now fully activated, emitted waves of electromagnetic interference that extended into space. It became clear that Eden wasn't just retaliating, it was ensuring no one could escape its reach. The colonists had awakened a power they couldn't comprehend, and now that power was preparing to strike back in ways they couldn't anticipate. The transports raced toward the Sovereign, carrying the survivors of the colony's collapse. The ship's sensors were awash with interference. As Eden's electromagnetic pulses grew stronger, their tendrils of disruption extending into orbit. Alarms blared throughout the ship as systems began to fail one by one. Communications, navigation, even life support flickered precariously. Eden Core worked tirelessly to stabilize the ship, recalibrating circuits and rerouting power to critical systems. But the AI's efficiency was stretched thin. The planet was adapting faster than it could counter. From the observation deck, the survivors watched in stunned silence as Eden's surface transformed. The monoliths, now towering spires, pulsed with a blinding energy that illuminated the storm-covered planet. Tendrils of black, viscous material writhed across the land, consuming every trace of the colony. The storm above intensified, arcs of violet lightning striking the spires in a dazzling display that seemed less like chaos and more like coordination. Eden wasn't reacting out of rage, it was consolidating its power. As the last transport docked with the Sovereign, the crew scrambled to devise a plan. Some argued for immediate escape, even though the ship's engines were not yet fully functional after the long voyage. Others, led by the science team, proposed an attempt to communicate with Eden. They theorized that the planet's actions were not purely hostile but a defensive measure, a response to the colonists' perceived aggression. If they could find a way to convey their surrender, perhaps they could end the assault. Eden Core synthesized their data and reached a chilling conclusion: direct communication with Eden's intelligence was theoretically possible but carried immense risk. To bridge the gap between human consciousness and the planet's vast, alien network, a neural interface would need to be established. This would require one person to link directly with Eden, exposing their mind to the overwhelming tide of its thoughts and emotions. It was a gamble with no guarantees of success and a high likelihood of mental annihilation for the participant. As the crew debated, the interference reached a critical level. The ship's orbital stabilizers failed, and the Sovereign began to drift closer to Eden's atmosphere. Time had run out. One of the survivors, a biologist who had been among the first to study the monolith, stepped forward. Without hesitation, they volunteered to make the connection. The neural interface was hastily prepared, and as the biologist lay back in the connection chamber, electrodes attached to their temples, the crew watched anxiously. The moment the connection was established, the biologist's body convulsed violently. Their eyes rolled back, and they let out a guttural cry that echoed through the ship. On the screens displaying neural activity, the patterns were incomprehensible, an explosion of data that defied human understanding. Then, abruptly, the convulsions stopped. The biologists opened their eyes, now glowing faintly with the same energy as the monoliths. Through them, Eden spoke not in words, but in a cascade of emotions and images. The planet conveyed its history, a sentient entity that had existed for eons, its intelligence distributed across its surface. It had evolved to protect itself from external threats, and the arrival of the colonists had been interpreted as an invasion. The pulse they had unleashed had been seen as an act of war. Yet, through the connection, Eden also recognized the colonists' capacity for understanding and coexistence. It offered a truce, but with a condition: humanity must leave and never return. As the connection ended, the biologists collapsed, their body lifeless, but their sacrifice not in vain. Eden Core interpreted the planet's message and relayed the stark reality to the crew. The Sovereign would have to abandon its orbit and retreat into the void, leaving Eden untouched and uncolonized. With no other choice, the ship's engines were activated, drawing on emergency reserves to escape the planet's gravitational pull. As the Sovereign moved away, the monoliths dimmed and the storm began to dissipate. Eden receded into the distance, a reminder of humanity's hubris and the mysteries of the universe that defy conquest. The surviving colonists stared out at the shrinking planet, their dreams of a new home shattered but their lives spared. They had come seeking a future but had instead found a lesson: not all worlds are meant to be claimed. As the ship drifted into the darkness of space, its destination uncertain, one thought lingered in their minds. They were not the only intelligent force in the galaxy, and some boundaries were never meant to be crossed. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Sci-Fi Horizon Stories for more thrilling tales of science fiction and adventure. If this story sent chills down your spine and left you craving more, smash that like button, share it with fellow explorers, and subscribe to Sci-Fi Horizon Stories. The universe is vast, mysterious, and full of surprises. Don't miss the next heart-pounding adventure waiting just beyond the stars.